in with a coach. Actually, I believe we have an interview standing by on the stage.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Great cast on the day. I am joined by Coach Dylan of Immortals. I should say Dr. Dylan, like you guys said, putting on a clinic here, and I am with one of the head doctors. I got to ask you, with a team that continues to win, has such a good record, what is actually your biggest challenge as a coach?
I think for all of our coaching staff at Immortals, because it's just not me, the biggest challenge is just staying consistent. Like, it's a really long season. And at the end of the day, what really matters is playoffs. So I think preparing ourselves for the long haul, for playoffs and for Worlds, is probably what's been the most challenging.
And what does practice look like? What is a focus for Immortals with a team that always does well? Your engages work, you have hardly any troubles during a game. What do you actually focus on to continue to get better when everything's still going right?
I know it looks like everything's going right, but even in the games we're winning, right, there's a lot we feel we can improve on. Like with every game, even with short wins, even with decisive wins, there's always things we can be looking at to improve. So I feel like there's no shortage of things to look at during practice and stuff we're focusing on.
Well, it's always a perfect mindset to have. Obviously, it continues to be the catalyst that catapults you guys forward. My final question to you, 6-1-4 is coming up in a pretty ominous time for playoffs to happen. Is this something that helps Immortals with their ability to adapt, or could it hurt you guys?
Well, I think the main thing of the changes is there's going to be a lot more standard lanes. And I think for any team that has such strong laners as Immortals, like we have, I think it's going to be good for us. Obviously, it's going to be a pretty big change, so we're going to have to see as the patch comes. But for us, I'm looking forward to the change.
Sounds great. I'm sure the fans are as well. Congratulations on the win, and best of luck in future matches as they go. You guys are very close to that international and playoff position. Now we're going to throw it back to the desk to end off that game.
Thank you very much, Riv. Great to hear from Coach Dylan of Immortals. We don't always get to hear the coach's perspective on the team and the games that they're playing. Immortals, though, 2-0 over Apex. This game was just absolutely insane. 21 minutes and 8-second victory from Immortals. So, you know, this is more reminiscent of the 18-minute victories we were seeing from them in Spring Split. They went hard, and they did not stop for this entire game.
The funniest thing to me was the game ending with 4 people alive on both teams, but there's just double super minions coming at 20 minutes in the game. Like, no character is strong enough to really defend against those, and they just kind of pummeled the Nexus down with everyone alive. It was pretty funny.
Now, in contrast, though, to what's happening over on the TSM side of things on NALCS 1, where they did take the first victory over Phoenix 1, in a fast game itself, but in a very low action game, very much starved them out. Immortals is the team that's very happy to go a little bit ham, to create those really high action, chaotic games and find their advantages there. And they did exactly that. We saw within the first few minutes of the game an insane amount of pressure to all the lanes, specifically in that mid lane here. As you'll notice, 5 minutes in, this is going to be a 2-for-1 in favor of Immortals, an aggressive Kassadin at level 4.
I think this is a situation where you should be happy getting the TP out and flashing, but that's not how Immortals plays. They try and bait him in so that Rainover can get it. Turns around, boom, Keen kills it. No, most people might back off, but here, Rainover was able to pick up the kill. Once again, maybe he's flashes out, he's trying to get out, anything like that. Nope, he just kills Ray as well. Just going to turn around and fight him because he's only level 2 to his level 4. Gets a nice barrel over the wall, and I think this just
snipe.
Yeah, speaks to Rainover as a player. He's so calm.
And then in comes the ambulance.
Yep. The Soraka ambulance.
The exhaust, the heals to keep him safe. That ends up being 2-for-1. 2 big kills going over Rainover. He'd already been a part of 2 kills prior to that. So at 5 minutes, he was already 2-0-2 in the game. That's an absolutely nuts kill participation. It speaks to the amount of craziness that was already happening on the map so early.
Yeah, so even in that first play where Pobelter died, he didn't even have to die because Keen actually had 2 points into E. And when he walked back in, Pobelter actually killed himself by charging up his E to try and kill Keen. So that kind of just speaks to how aggressive they are. But even then, like, Rainover played that really, really well.
And that's why I kind of want to take this series and remove Immortals from this series and speak about them more in the context of the league itself and their matchups against other teams. For example, TSM, because Immortals is the kind of team that wants to go back in and create more action because they're confident that they will come out ahead in the skirmish game, right? If people keep funneling in, we will mechanically outplay you. We will skirmish better than you. TSM might still be confident in that area, but we saw it very evidenced to us in this previous game on the other stream that TSM, they don't need kills to win games. They're happy to just blow your summoners, go take an objective, rotate over here, make sure we've got minion waves pushing there. They're going to play a much more slower pace macro game.
I think it takes two to tango in a sense. So you see here that they're getting baited in, and like you see Keen TP, and he's like chasing really hard for the kill. And I think you might not see that out of TSM the same way where TSM, like we saw in their game when they got a lead, they didn't feel like they had to get everything possible, squeeze the last drop out of that small advantage. Like TSM will just take the lead and back off. And so I think it might be a hard matchup for Immortals where they're always pushing harder and harder and harder, and they can backfire, whereas TSM just takes the lead and they don't keep pushing as hard as they can.
I feel like Immortals is like pushing their limits like as hard as they can, and on top of that, it's just very, I don't know, maybe it's better for practice that way because they can see where they can finally go, while TSM kind of like just calm, collected, doesn't really like overextend. They don't really get complacent. Like for example, Immortals went undefeated the split before, but maybe they're trying to lose so they don't get complacent. I don't know. It feels like they gain more out of like going super hard and finding their like key point for limit, and maybe they'll just like restrain themselves later. So I don't know how that's gonna play in.
Well, yeah, it's a curiosity, and being able to hear from Dylan a little bit about the team and their efforts this split to really to shore up the weaknesses that had been exposed in Spring Split, right? The fact that they were kind of stuck in a singular meta and couldn't find their way out of it. They're doing what they can now in the regular season to test their limits, test their strengths and weaknesses so that they don't run into that same issue when they make it to playoffs.
I think the most interesting thing from that interview was talking about the proposed changes on 615 about the lane swaps and how it's going to impact them. If you ever were worried about your team getting complacent, now there's a whole different meta coming in. You can't possibly be complacent when everything's going to change. And on top of the fact that it might favor some team strengths, like he was saying, they have really strong laners, and they're really looking forward to that. Whereas TSM is a team, like we saw in their game that they just played, that in the 2v1, they will pick you apart and slowly get advantages over and over and over. And that might not be possible, or at least the optimal strategy in the coming patches.
Yeah, those changes in the weeks to come will make League of Legends in general very interesting as people are figuring out how exactly to play around those changes. Now, player of the game for this game in particular, Reignover 406 on Gragas. You saw it in that replay, right place, right time. When is he ever not in the right place at the right time? And got his team out to a very early lead, securing those kills and helping with a few ganks.
Yeah, overall, just a solid game from him. You see his team is a team that just goes absolutely crazy sometimes, and I think it used to be Pole Belter as kind of the rock that we always talked about, but I think Reignover is one of them too. You never see him worried. You never see him bite off more than he can chew usually. I mean, everyone makes mistakes, but his never seemed to be the kind where it's like, oh, I thought I could have killed him, but I couldn't.
When you talk about veteran status, Dyrus, it just appears, even if you don't watch his player cam, watching his character itself, it always feels like he is so calm that his heart rate hasn't budged since, minute one, whereas everybody else is probably freaking out in the middle of team fights. I feel like Reignover is always so aware, so smart and intelligent about this game.
Yeah, he always makes the best decision. Like if one of his teammates messes up, he always goes for the most optimal play. He's always there to bail them out, and he's always there to either start it or, save someone.
All right, well, that's going to do it here for NALCS 2, the stream entirely. Immortals, rather, taking the 2-0 victory over Apex to close out the day there. It's time now for us to send you all over to NALCS 1, where TSM is currently jumping into Champions Select against Phoenix 1, looking to close